We actually did the 8th one last night. It is the same presentation as last night, but we figured we better get the number right, so we changed it to number 9 in community meetings on. So I am Dr. John Kerner, Superintendent of the Northeastern Local Schools. We're doing a good part of the Dale Miller, our new speaking education. They are chime in with questions themselves, a board member and not as the board. So somebody who was at the meeting sent them a text with a question, and they asked it actually during the meeting. So we were happy that that worked so well. We had about 40 people, I think, watching online last night, and then I think that has actually been viewed by almost 300 people today. So we're trying to get the word out and the message out for people to see what's going on and get that community input. So what's brought us to this? Moving in terms of community engagement. I'm not going to do every one of these. We had, obviously, meetings around the district at each of the buildings. We did tours associated with any of those. And tonight, if anybody is interested in a tour of the building when we're done, we can definitely do that as well if you want to see the facility. But we purposely moved around the district trying to get as many people involved. The number in parentheses out to the far right of each of those tells about how many people attended. So we started off with kind of small, but then we got to Rolling Hills on that Community Forum number 4 and had about 250 people. When we looked at 6 plans for buildings, and we got engagement from everyone who was there. They put stickers on the plans that they liked best, and we narrowed it down at that meeting to basically 2 plans. We did a community survey where we did a phone survey, scientific survey, trying to test out those 2 plans to see which one would be the one to put on the ballot, or if we should even go to the ballot. Well, best laid plans, that survey came back basically about 50-50 for the 2 plans, which when you break them down were basically a 1 high school plan and a 2 high school plan with buildings, again, throughout the district. So the board had to make a decision, and they made a decision to go on the ballot this past November with a 2 building plan, 2 pre-K-12s, one to be built just outside of this building on some land to be purchased to the north of the football field. And then Northeastern would be at the South Vienna site where the current building is in South Vienna. And the athletic facilities would stay at Northeastern High School. You'll see all of this depicted as we go throughout the presentation. That levy obviously didn't pass. We had some more information that we shared with the board, but we were close and decided the board here recently to put the exact same initiative back on the ballot, and that will be voted on May the 8th. And again, we'll talk about all that as we move through. So we are here tonight to try and get your questions answered and share a great deal of information with you. This was the voting turnout. We lost by just a little over 300 votes. Pretty close. We are planning on getting over that hump this time. This is our current configuration. The red line that you see in the middle is basically Route 4, which is our dividing line for the east and west, with, again, the Northridge or KR side to the west, and northeastern South Vienna side to the east. This is what the new configuration would look like. One building, pre-K-12, just outside of this building, and then one building on the northeastern side at South Vienna, where we gain sewer and water access, and the stadium and facilities for athletics would stay at Northeastern High School. The two buildings aren't obviously the same size because they're sized to fit different populations of students. We have about 1,200 students where that red line was to the east, and a little over 2,000 students to the west. We're looking to partner with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, or the state of Ohio, and get about 40% matching funds for the educational part of the facilities. That was one of our community forums back in the early part of this discussion. We have to get approval from them for those master plans. We have done that. That's what's allowing us to be on the ballot and get almost 4 this. But they give you so much square footage more for high school. And then Mike will talk to you out. So with
familiar to something else that's out here.
I apologize.
The detail that, so you see that with these buildings and talk collective space and the quantities of the kinds of spaces to deal with 32 of them. High school class, so if you want to get a, this will be not already. Special ed is where this building, band room, a large band room, large choir room, the access to elementary music rooms, ensemble rooms and practice rooms, theoretically all designed in an area, hopefully on the first floor. I know right here you're going up and down a floor to get to the band room, all acoustically designed, and they'll be really powerful. Northeastern side will also have music spaces, slightly different in size. You see the media center. Athletics, right now you have one gymnasium. The plan will be 2 gymnasiums in this plan. The main gymnasium, which you'll see at about 1,500, is 13,575 square feet. And then an auxiliary gym of 6,400 square feet, both in this building. You can see storage rooms, showers and locker rooms, training rooms, health classrooms, etc. Student dining and kitchen. One large, nearly 12,000 square foot space that'll house about 1/4 of the student population at one time for seatings. So we're talking about a large, an additional large space in that building. Some scene shops and dressing rooms and drama storage and so forth. On the VOAG side, you'll see that shows up at the Northeastern pre-K to 12 because that's where those programs reside. We have some computer classrooms, some life skills rooms. And then on the building services, these are things like corridors, mechanical rooms, restrooms. So essentially we add up all those parts and pieces. We get to the bottom line, add a construction factor, and that brings us to $265,397 for the Kenton Ridge and $179,330 for the Northeastern side. So again, I'm happy during the questions to do any kind of diving into any one of those spaces in particular, but wanted to walk you through that program. All right, so starting over on the Northeastern side, we're in South Vienna, Interstate 70 traveling east and west. Approximately 18 acres currently owned at that site. We zoom in, you can see the boundaries of the 18 acres. You can see the South Vienna School right here in front. And our proposal is to add acreage, approximately 29 acres, by picking up adjacent land from South Vienna, as well as from Ritchie Brothers, who owns the pie-shaped piece and the wedge. So on those 29 acres, we would construct their new pre-K to 12 building. After this is complete, students would move into the new building. This building would be demolished and converted into parking and student, some outdoor athletic fields. So here's a conceptual of this campus plan. And I'll throw out the caveat that these are conceptual at this point. So after the bond issue passes, there will be a deeper dive, more community engagement, more input to kind of fine tune and refine this. The goal of this was to provide a sufficient vision for folks who say things like, like how could it fit? How could it work? What are we going to do for loading and unloading? Sufficiently to detail to kind of work through those and to test it. So in this concept, we have a large pre-K to 12 building, and we think about these as buildings. It's almost more of a campus of, say, 3 separate buildings together. So on this particular campus, we have an elementary school serving grades pre-K to 5 in a 2-story building. All of our plans are designed to be expandable, so you can see how footprints can enlarge for the academic core. And then on the other side, we're considering a middle school, 6 to 8, and a high school, 9 to 12, a 2-story academic wing. So the middle school could be on one floor, and the high school could be on another floor, so the students are separated. In between, what's called out as a shared services building, and I just walked through the program, things like the 2 gymnasiums, the central plant, 1 kitchen, the large student dining room, maybe some music spaces, locker rooms, etc. So those are all the functions that both the elementary school, middle and high would access, but from different locations. In front, a large parking field, parent drop-off and pickup with separate entries for the middle school and high school, as well as the elementary and out. And athletic fields after South Vienna comes down for some on-site practicing. One thing I'll point out is on this campus, the athletic complex, so the track, football, baseball and softball, and tennis courts, would stay at the Northeastern site. So this plan is to do the building, but to retain the athletic complex that's there currently at Northeastern site and continue to use this in the future. Zooming out a click. And here's a rendering. I'd like to thank, I don't know if it's here, Chris Thompson, who did some aerial drone imagery for this, which was really awesome. So he's a community member. He shot these images, and we did the design overlay for the new renderings right on top of it. So here's a view looking north to the elementary school on the left, that shared services building in the middle, and the middle school and high school on the right. Again, conceptually 2-story buildings, separate entrances. This is designed so after hours, these can be secured, sectioned off. We essentially have a community center for that part of town. Okay, Kenton Ridge, pre-K to 12. We fly over here, we take an aerial shot. We're on approximately 41.5 acres. And we're sitting right here in the auditorium. In this proposal, we would purchase adjacent 40 acres to the north, and construct a new pre-K-12 campus at that location. This allows us to retain all the athletic fields as they are, not have to reconstruct them, construct the new building first, and then after this new building is built, students would move in, and the ability to have a consideration about what to do with this building. Does it all come down as parts of it remaining? But allows us to do that without having to swing space an entire school. We will do a traffic study after the bond issue passes to test actual accounts and the loads through jurisdictions of authority to determine what we need to do. But our instincts tell us that we're going to need a second way out on here. So we're proposing a connection to Bozar Road. And we don't know exactly where that's going to be. But the district currently does own a sliver out to Bozar Road. But there might be other connections that work better for the community or the neighbors or the jurisdiction of authority. Essentially what we're saying is we believe, in addition to this, we're going to need another outlet for the students. A little bit about the site plan. This is a bigger school, so its footprint increases. And And we're envisioning a separate pre-K to 5 elementary school, again 2-story, a separate middle school, 6-8, 2-story, and a separate high school, 9-12, 2-story. Again, this is all designed to be expandable, so if there's growth in the district, academic wings could grow here, 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 and here quite easily without having to move roads. Shared services building, similar to the northeastern side, would be your main gym, your AUGS gym, your locker rooms, which would be nicely located near the athletic fields, music spaces, central plant, one central plant, central kitchen, and your student dining room. All those being in the shared services building. So the elementary students then are not eating with high school students because they're separated by time. So it's a large enough space, they're in different lunch periods, they're approaching the student dining room from totally different directions, and they will not be in that space at the same time. Again, I appreciate Chris for this shot. I asked him if he could get up high enough and give us a peek of Buck Creek. So he did that right up here to the left. So we're flying up and we're looking south to the existing Kitten Ridge High School where we're sitting right here. You see the athletic fields. And then conceptually the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, each with its own separate and unique administrative areas, secure drop-offs, but then all sharing that central building in the back. And then here the master plans are side by side. So we got the KR side, pre-K to 12, and the northeastern side on the right. Talk for a second about security. So security is something that is, people are talking about it from what happened in Parkland. I just want to kind of walk through a little bit about safety and security and some of the tactics that we're going to be thinking about in your new schools. So while this may be public attention recently, this is something that we've been thinking about for about 2 decades. And there's some kind of watershed moments that happened that woke people up. And the first one was Columbine. That was in almost 20 years ago. And that kind of rattled school designers and the whole community. It made us rethink what we're doing, consider security in a much deeper way, and add secure vestibules. One of the most significant things that changed was police tactics. Because prior to that point, police and safety officers were viewing these events as like hostage situations. So they would come and they would secure a perimeter, and they would wait for SWAT to come in. So police tactics have changed considerably. This idea of moving towards the sound of gunfire, which means when the cops show up, they're in, which is unbelievable. So a lot has changed, Columbine starting it. The second watershed moment, and there have been, unfortunately, lots of incidents between, was Sandy Hook in 2012. The difference about this one was the perpetrator wasn't someone who belonged in the school. And so it doubled down on access control, secure vestibules, and locking up the school to try to keep folks who aren't supposed to be in there out. So that was Sandy Hook. And then the last one with Stoneman Douglas, the coach has changed. And in that event, unfortunately, the perpetrator, there's a fire drill in the morning, the perpetrator came to the building, threw the fire alarm, which made an incredibly loud noise, and all the students are out in the hallways, and then the event unfolded. So the new code, which will be employed in this building, is what they call voice override. So the fire alarm's going off, they have the ability to do a vocal override on the PA system and alert folks to know exactly instructions what to do. Versus before, the alarm's going off and you can't hear the PA over it. So all those things will be employed in your district. I want to show you an example. So here's the school, and here's the front door, and here's the office. So a lot of the techniques we use are just what we call natural techniques, just in the design. So here's the front office area, and we have the principal and assistant principal naturally positioned right at the front. So they're sitting at their desk, they've got a window there, and just in their natural workflow, they're able, just by their daily activities, to kind of keep an eye on what is happening at the front door. So here's the front door in the morning, In the morning, that is supervised with adults. Both doors are unlocked, and students are able to freely walk in. When school starts, this interior door is locked, and this is what we call a secure vestibule design. You'll see an image of this on the top left. So you would come in, and you would not have access to these doors, and again, through natural design means, you'll see the secretary kind of sitting, doing their job, and they can very naturally just see who then is coming in. This door can be locked if it wants to be, and then there's a transaction window. So if there was someone who's uncomfortable, the secretary can come and talk to that person. And then if everything's okay, check in, then they're fine putting that badge on, saying you can natural of sight out into the middle of the school. Then they're identified and let in. So that's a secure vestibule. There are other mechanical means, cameras, which would be ubiquitous, inside and outside of the building. The ability to record and monitor these cameras, both your administrative team and law enforcement, being able to have access to this. Access control. So we know who is coming into doors, exactly at what time, and if a staff member is let go for some reason, they're simply written out of the system. We don't have keys floating around folks entering the building. Then also some mechanical means of lockdown door barricades. Easily be slid into doors to provide protection. Another thing is 17, and the code requires a storm shelter to be designed. So the New Kent Ridge School will have a storm shelter designed to hold the 2,000 students planned for it, plus all the teachers. And the kind of the old way of doing this was our structural engineer would tell us which were the strongest interior walls, fewest windows, and the students line up. The new way is to design a space called it could be a band room, could be an aux gym, could be some other large space that's designed to withstand an F5 tornado. So again, not the whole school, but a storm shelter, a piece of the whole school designed to do that. You'll see some of the standards if you want to check out FEMA P361 and ICC 500. These are the design standards. It has to withstand the airborne missile test, which is a 2x4 traveling at 100 miles an hour that weighs 15 pounds. Again, that would be something that could happen in an F5 tornado. So this is a new state requirement embedded in this plan, also co-funded by the state. A couple things on energy efficiency. Big buildings can be extremely energy efficient in the sense that they have one central plan. With our design team, we actually build the design in 3D and test it and run energy calcs and models in the design phase to make sure we're optimizing systems to reduce energy. There's all kinds of renewables that we can talk about after the bond issue hopefully passes. One of the low-hanging fruit ones is what we call solar thermal, which is we use the sun's energy to preheat the water before it hits the boilers or the hot water for the kitchen. Again, it's kind of free, and it's almost an immediate payback. There's lots of other systems too. We always love to make it conspicuous. Sometimes do rain barrels and some things that can play into the curriculum and help the kids get excited about these issues as well. Lastly, maybe something near and dear to folks who go to school here is daylighting. There's hardly any windows in this building. And just as a value, as a human being, to be in a space where you have access to natural light, you can see out the windows, you can see what the environment is like, really has a major impact for our learners and for our teachers who are working in this building day in and day out. So that whole daylighting strategy is something we would incorporate. Here's a budget. Here's a list of the projects. The two largest projects being the two pre-K to 12s. You see the total cost here and down, just over 120 million. We have budgets in here to abate and demolish all the existing buildings. That's not necessarily meaning there's a commitment to do so, and John can probably talk about that. We'll talk about it now? Sure.
Yeah, we, again, to get the funding from the OFCC, you want to include all of that in your master plan. So that co-funding piece of 40%, they will also put into any demolition that you do. Now that doesn't mean you have to do it. So as Mike mentioned a little while ago, getting the bond issue passed is just the first step in the planning, and there will be much more community engagement. Once we get the buildings built, then it becomes more community engagement to say, what are we going to do with our facilities that are still existing? Some of those are naturally taken care of. For example, at South Vienna, that building has to come down to be able to have the parking and some athletic fields around it for practices. Here at Kenton Ridge, not all of this building would have to come down, but maybe it's what makes sense that it all comes down, because anything that you keep, you have to be able to run. And there's cost to any of those types of plans. So that becomes something that we have to make decisions as a, we also have decisions on what happens to some of the other problems. That again, community wants to see happen, other things that may be a part of something in those locations.
The local impact is, so the state is just under here on the right, we're 79. Us, this 0.5 mil maintenance levy to accompany the project used to maintain the new buildings over the future years. So that's a state of Ohio requirement. So that's a 7.96 mil levy for 37 years to pay for the 79.335 plus the 0.5 mil maintenance levy, which is a duration of 23 years. The total effective millage, adding those two together, is 8.46 mils, which per $100,000 home value is $295.75 a year, or per month, $24.65 per month. Again, that's per $100,000 home value. The ballot language will look precisely like this. This is issue number 2. And when you go into the ballot box, you'll see this broken down into point 1 and point 2. Point 1 is the 7.96 piece that's funding the primary portion. Added to that, point 2 is the 0.5 mil maintenance levy. So even though that shows up on the ballot as 1 and 2, it's for both or against both. Right, so for would be you would support both of those pieces. The schedule, should the bond issue pass in May? When? Bond issue pass in May. Design would start approximately this summer and go for about 1 year. And then construction would start and would be about 2 years after that. So we're looking about July of 2021 for move-in. And that concludes the master plan portion of the presentation. We want to hear any questions, and there's going to be a whole
Of the one in November, shelter requirement. Build that facility that would withstand an F5 tornado. The materials that you use to do that obviously have to be much more rigorous and obviously more expensive. The state will co-fund their 40% of that, so that's also why you see the state funding amount go up. We were just barely over 40 million in November. We're now almost 41 million from the state, and that is because of that shelter requirement. A little bit of an escalation cost in for construction. It doesn't get cheap, small amount. The longer we wait, okay? So with that, turn it over to questions now. About the facilities predominantly. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a couple questions. 2 times I heard you mention something about acquiring more land or something. Is that incorporated in this levy of money, or is that going to be additional?
Okay, the question is the additional land purchases. So the about 11 acres, I believe it is, at South Vienna, and about 40 acres that we're looking at here are included in the price of this levy. Okay, now we actually haven't purchased that land yet. We have been in contact with the owners, and we're pretty firm on the South Vienna piece. We are still working here, but we can't really move forward much until we pass the bond issue, because we have to know that we have the money. We can't afford to go out and buy those pieces of land without passing the bond issue. So we do have commitment that people are willing to sell, but we have to do some more work yet to get that to happen. Okay? And obviously that biggest part of that work bond is you passed. Okay? Good question. Okay, the question is, if we don't demolish a facility, do we still get the state funding? And the answer to that is no. Okay? If we don't use a portion of what they're allotting to demolish, then they won't give us that share. Now, we have still included our share in there, but it, again, becomes, that's part of the bond. But again, we're going to have to figure out exactly what that plan is and where we're at in that budget. Okay, good question. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned a storm shelter for KR, but not Northeastern.
The question, is there a storm shelter for both buildings? And the answer to that is yes. It has to be included in both.
And another one. On the windows of both schools are being, of all the schools that will be built, are they all windows going to be hurricane proof?
The question is, will all windows be hurricane proof?
I know it's expensive, but it's money well spent.
Yes, so the question is, will all windows be hurricane proof? We've never done that, just from a cost standpoint. If that's something that, this district wants to consider, we can take note of that and explore the cost of that.
A question that came from last night was whether or not the buildings would be built with bulletproof glass, which is available as well. And again, it's kind of the same thing, the same question of, again, obviously that adds a great deal to the price tag. Could that discussion be, we're going to put bulletproof glass in certain locations in the building? Again, those are all things that would have to be decided. Obviously all of those, again, trying to live within a budget, you got to, again, decide what makes the most sense to put into that.
Human life.
Man, absolutely, you're talking, absolutely agree about human life, but to be able to say that you can do everything to absolutely protect for everything, I don't know that we can afford that. Not saying that we can't do some things.
I hear you, but in Dade County, Florida, and I know that's where I'm from, that's why I save kids' lives at Selma Douglas. We don't know.
Okay, let's continue on with questions. Not trying to, again, definitely want to get through and allow for a lot of questions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so she said they're not hurricane proof, but we don't have hurricanes here. But we do have tornadoes, and we did have one go right through here like 5 years ago. So anyways, but we're going to have this shelter, so the kids will live in the shelter. But my question would be, just when do the windows, are they proofed up to, let's say, 90 miles an hour wind? You know, that's what makes sense for this area.
Okay, and again, I don't know what the question is what are the ratings on the windows, and I'm not sure.
That would be a building code requirement, and I would have to, I can't tell you that off the top of my head, the PSI rating for the windows.
I just was trying to make the question more applicable to this area.
So what the building code says is the Ohio area is not a hurricane zone or a tornado zone. So what the building code says is, since we're in a tornado zone, we provide a storm shelter for that event, which is designed differently. The durations of a tornadic event are much shorter, so the requirements of that facility are different than a hurricane shelter, where they can essentially be there for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours writing that out. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
My concern is with the building being connected, and I see how the security is in play for if there's a person that comes in that is not a student. But how is that going to be a security if it is a student? Is the preschool going to be just as much a risk of a shooting as if a high schooler comes in and does the shooting? Or that's my major concern and everything.
Sure. So or maybe I'll rephrase this as a statement. The security of my kids is super important. I'm concerned about all levels of security. A person in the building traveling around, what can we do to consider that? Some other techniques I did not get into, or you see these are separate buildings. We have the ability to lock down separate buildings. We have the ability to lock down even internally wings. So second floor from the first floor, maybe the second floor in partition. Giving option, what you want to do in this event is provide options for for the teachers and the kids to have options on where they can go. I'm not forced to go in this direction. I can go this direction, this direction, this direction. So giving them those choice to lock down within that campus.
And then one more thing I kind of wondered, my husband wanted me to ask. Is there going to be any kind of security now?
The question is, education officer. One of the things that I do want to share as well about anything that we can add to the, we're not going to cut back on what we're all students. You know, the drill that we do and trying to make sure to try and deal with anything, some of those types of things. Okay, they are all tied together. Do decide to, again, one of the sites that we currently have is no longer, that money would reside within the general fund. It can go into any.
So that's 500,000 for the whole 23 years? Is that correct?
Okay. The question is what for is that? 5 mils is 14 years would be a little bit for maintenance, doing things to the buildings. Okay, or to and things. Why would you need that kind of money? You know, hopefully it isn't built quite as well as we would have liked, and we need to do a little bit of an upgrade to take care of it. Another thing is we're going to use the most up-to-date and all of those types of things. So 10 years down there, that it makes sense to retrofit the buildings for as well. Required, tied in, involved in the, so it is part of the piece.
The KR buildings were expanded, happens to need more.
Okay, are all of the buildings expandable at the KR piece?
So on that diagram, I'm allocated space on the first floor of that middle school for a media center. So right now there's classroom floor for the middle classrooms could grow. It's possible that some, but the general point is the diagram. Once we start designing it actively, the goal is we're always thinking about how to easily expand this in the future. So we're thinking about that. If folks love this and are moving in here by the droves, we want to be able to easily add some classrooms and not have to undo work that we've already paid for. Yes, ma'am.
All students, when they come in, just go past the principal's office.
Are there seven at any of the? The answer to that is okay. That would be the school at the northeastern piece. It'd be actually elementary, middle, and high at the high school. Or at Northeastern. And then for Kenton Ridge, it is a separate entrance for elementary, middle, and high school.
So will they have officers monitoring the people that come in those buildings?
There would be a secured vestibule into each of those. Yes.
Just to point that out for you on this diagram, you see these little red tick marks, visitor park, and then all the folks. Bus loading and unloading.
Like a STEM in each school, so you can get the tax dollars back to the kids that are born in town and bring them back to their own districts.
Are we trying to have STEM facilities within each of the new buildings? We're not specifically designing for it to be exactly like STEM, but we are definitely designing to have better technology and better opportunities to provide for our students through the use of the new facilities. We started a one-to-one initiative with technology here at the high schools, both sides of the district, and we're looking at expanding